You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey listeners, let me let you in on a little secret. You don't have to stress about planning your class lessons, small groups, and individual sessions anymore. My school counseling membership program, Impact, is here to help. So, what do Impact members get? Monthly curriculum plans across all 3 tiers, SEL lessons, small groups, individual, and seasonal activities, step-by-step video implementation guides, bi-weekly Zoom coaching calls with me, and exclusive Facebook group community. This membership is designed for school counselors who want to deliver the best possible content to their students, but who also want to just press the easy button. You'll get access to monthly curriculum plans, resources, support, and community so you can deliver quality, engaging, life-changing counseling lessons to your kiddos. So what do you think? Are you ready to make an impact? Join today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So in today's episode, we're going to talk all about data. Now, I would have not typically planned a data episode for this month because I feel like I talk about data all the time. You know when you're passionate about something and you can't stop talking about it. It's like the whole vegan CrossFit theory, right? But anyways, so I am passionate about data. I love it and I feel like I'm constantly talking about it. So I feel like you guys might be bored of it. But apparently that's not the case because when I did my poll asking you guys what your New Year's resolutions are, your New Year's goal as a school counselor, we had a few things about data. Someone said working with data more effectively. And someone said, keep more data. That was their goal. And I know many of you may relate to this. Maybe you are reluctant to start data tracking or data collection because you don't really know where to start. Or maybe you're doing it, but you could be a little better at it. Or maybe you're a pro, but you just want to double check that you're doing it correctly. So I'm excited to talk about this with you guys. Like I said, I love this topic. And I thought that I had kind of, talked about data enough, but you guys want more data and I am here for it. Okay. So today's episode, I'll be talking to you about how to get started with data. Now, I don't want to dig too deep because I want this to be accessible. I want, if you haven't started with data, if it's your goal to get better at data this year, or if you're a newer school counselor, or maybe you've been in the game forever, but you've just been too busy with all your other tasks to start the data tracking, I want you to not feel overwhelmed, but I want you to feel like this is a great entry-level data teaching for you. So I'm going to share with you, we're going to focus mainly on 2 data tools that can help you easily track student progress. But before I dive deeper into those 2, I want to share with you the general 5 data tools that I kind of run my counseling program with and recommend to others. First up, I have what I call the Counseling Hub. And the Counseling Hub is a counseling caseload spreadsheet and a counseling log. So in last week's episode, I played a clip from a training I did where I did a deep dive on the counseling spreadsheet, the caseload spreadsheet, I'm sorry. But I also talk about, in that training, the counseling log. So I only played for you guys the spreadsheet part because that pertained to what we were talking about with organizing your small groups. But the whole thing's on YouTube. So if you go to my YouTube channel, we'll link to it in the show notes, you can watch the full training, the video and all, with the tutorials. So that's really helpful. And I break down what the Counseling Hub is and how to use and set up your counseling caseload and counseling log. Now, these 2 tools they kind of go together and they are for tracking services provided. So when it comes to data, I want you to think about 2 things. You have student progress and services provided. So services provided, this is where you're counting up how many hours you've spent with kiddos, how many groups you ran, how many individuals you saw, and so on. So these 2 forms will really help you gather that information. Then there's measuring student progress. So measuring student progress is when you're assessing how the kiddos have changed as a result of your services. So what were they doing before they started counseling? What were they doing after they started counseling? Have they improved? Have they stayed the same? Have they not improved? So that data is really powerful. That's what I'm going to deep dive on today. And that you can collect by using behavior surveys and self-assessments. And then, so the first one is that counseling hub that consists of the log and the caseload. That's part of that tracking and services that you provided. The second part is the behavior surveys and the self-assessments. Those 2 data tools really help you track student progress. And then the last 2 data tools, because I told you there were 5, the last 2 data tools you don't use all year round. So it's kind of I want you to think of them as like bookends to your year. So at the beginning of the year, you do your needs assessment, and then at the end of the year, you do your end of the year report. So you got your 2 bookends, and then you have that hub. Those are the 3 that I'm not really diving deep on, but the 2 I am diving deep on today are the behavior surveys and self-assessment. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. You ought to see me over here. I'm like holding my fingers up. I'm a very visual person, so it is kind of funny that I have a podcast. But I hope that carried through the audio waves for y'all. So when we talk about easily tracking student progress, so this is what our principals want to see, right? They want to know, and the teachers and the parents, you're taking this kiddo out of class, is it helping or not? You've been seeing them for 8 weeks, is it helping or not? So 2 ways we can assess this. We're going to ask the student themselves, that's a self-assessment, and we're going to survey parents and teachers, that's the behavior surveys. So by doing this, by getting all 3 people, plus of course your own observations and your own experiences working and counseling the student, you can get a complete wraparound picture here, and we can see, how the student has progressed, if they've progressed, and how it varies from not only who the person reporting is, so maybe the student's opinion of their progress is different than the parents', so it could vary person to person, or maybe it varies based on the situation. So maybe the parents' feedback is a little different than the teacher's feedback. Maybe the student's acting a different way at school than they are at home. They're having an easier time applying some strategies at school than they are at home, or vice versa. So it gives us a really complete, well-rounded data collection view if we collect from parents, teachers, and students themselves. So for parents and teachers, I love to do a behavior survey. So behavior survey is where you identify the behavior that you're working on, and then you're going to think of it like a pre-test and a post-test. You're going to have a pre-intervention survey and a post-intervention survey. The intervention being your counseling services. So whether you're doing a small group or, seeing them individually for 8 weeks. And that makes me think I should just note that I do think you should limit your sessions to 6 to 8 weeks, and then look at the data, reevaluate if you want to end sessions or continue. Don't have these ongoing counseling sessions that last forever. I know it can be hard not to, but then it gets really complicated and you're not measuring anything, and the students become really dependent on you. So it's best to keep them short-term and solution focused. So for the behavior surveys, you're going to identify the behavior that you're working on. So let's say that you're working on anger management with the student. And then you're going to have some questions regarding that. So the student appears angry, and it would be like sometimes, often, rarely, never. It's going to be a scale. Or when angry, the student is physical, sometimes, often, rarely, never. When angry, the student knows how to use coping strategies to calm down, sometimes, often, rarely, never. So you're going to send this to parents and send this to teachers. So you can make your own, super simple, just jot them down in there. Or you can, if you are a template person and would rather just have a template, I've created one. So you can snag that in my TPT store. We'll link to it in the show notes. So with these behavior surveys, what I recommend doing is at the start of services, so just so you don't forget to send them out, you can staple it to the permission slip that you send home to parents. So they're getting the permission slip, and please fill out this little survey and some info about the group or whatever. Same thing with the teacher, slip it in their box. When you're asking them, hey, when's the best time for me to meet with a student? I also put this behavior survey in your box. Can you please fill it out? Now with parents and teachers, they're busy people. You got to follow up and make sure you're getting these things back. Sometimes it may be easier to do a digital version. So I've made some in Google Forms as well. And you send them a Google form. Sometimes this is easier for parents. They're on their phones, they just fill it out real fast. That might be easier than them like circling the paper and sending it back. And you never know if it's even going to make it to the parent, because I've seen some of those backpacks and they are like a black hole. Stuff does not make it out of those. So that's the behavior surveys. Send it before sessions start. And then you're just going to tuck it away in the student's folder. And then that's that manila folder I'm talking about. And then at the end of your session, you're going to send it back out. I'm sorry, not the end of your one session, but the end of like your, when you've completed your series of sessions. So if you're meeting for 8 weeks, or if you're meeting for 6 weeks, you're going to send it back, the exact same questionnaire. And this time, just so make sure you have a spot for the date. This time the parents are indicating it is a post-services post-intervention survey. They put the date, answer the questions, and you can compare and contrast student progress. So maybe whereas pre-services, they knew no coping strategies and they were all angry almost daily, and then post-services, maybe they're angry the same amount of time, but they have some coping strategies now. Or maybe the parent doesn't think they're as angry as they were before. So see how powerful these can be? They're really cool, really great way to gain insight. Then you can compare and contrast the data like I was mentioning at home and at school. So hopefully everyone's kind of seeing a similar picture, but you never know. That's why it's important to get that well-rounded view. Now, the second thing is a self-assessment. So a self-assessment is exactly what it sounds like. It's an assessment for themselves that the student's going to take, right? So again, you do one pre and post services. So during the first session and during the last session. Now, you don't want the kids to get all freaked out, and you really want them to be honest. So you want to encourage them there are no right or wrong answers. Just answer honestly. And then, if you don't know anything, if you get no to all of them, that's fine, because that's why you're here. That's what we're going to learn, right? If they checked yes to everything, then it would be weird. They wouldn't need counseling. So just encourage them to be honest, make it real casual and not super formal or scary. And so if you're doing this in a group, a couple tips, I let kids get clipboards and then move to different parts of the room so they'll be honest, because I don't like them to, if we're sitting at a round table or a kidney table, they can kind of see each other's papers, and then they might be dishonest on some of the questions because they're embarrassed or they want to make sure that they're putting the, quote, right answer. So the self-assessment, this is going to be in more kid-friendly language, and I like to do yes, no, or maybe, or just yes or no. But usually, I used to have just yes or no, but then kids would circle the or. So yes, no, or maybe, because sometimes they're just not sure. It's not a certain, black or white thing. So it would be something like, I feel angry almost every day. Yes or no. I know what to do when I feel angry. Yes or no. I know who to talk to when I feel angry. Yes or no. I know I can name 3 coping strategies. Yes or no. Something like that. Or yes, no, maybe. And then you're going to, assess their results at the end of the conclusion of your sessions. And you're going to see, hopefully, some of those no's turned into yeses, right? And then you're thinking, okay, I have the data, now what? Well, first, get organized. So if you're using Google Forms, it's great because if you just click over to the results tab, you can export it to an Excel sheet, or you can just see, it'll make pretty graphs, pie charts for you. And that's a really cool way to see, how the students' answers have changed. If you didn't do it digitally, you can manually input it into Google Forms to get those same graphs, or you can come up with them on your own, or however you want to do it. But organize your data. And then you're going to do 2 things. The number one most important thing you're going to do is continue to figure out how to best support the student. So if based on the student data, based on the behavior survey and the self-assessments, you've determined that the student has, met their goal that you were working on with them, and that they've learned the coping, using the same example as anger management, perhaps they've learned the coping skills necessary and they're able to calm themselves down independently. So then we're going to transition them out of counseling, right? Let's go let them try those coping strategies in the real world, in their classroom. They don't need to come to you once a week anymore. Or maybe they're still having a really hard time and they need continued support. So maybe they need to be in a group again. Maybe they need individual counseling with you. Maybe they need an outside referral. Maybe you can talk to the parents on how to better support them at home, or the teacher in the classroom. You're going to, look into more intervention based on the data. Either way, it's not you failing. It's just information that is super helpful, right? So it's just factual information. It's logical, no emotion in here. Try not to take it personally. Just check it out. Now, the only time I would say to kind of take it personally is if you're doing a group and you notice everyone missed the same question. Like no one can name 3 coping strategies after the group. So then you want to go back and look at your group materials and say, did I have a session where I taught explicitly, here are some coping strategies, here are 10 coping strategies, let's practice them, let's act them out, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're teaching it, because then there might be a problem in the curriculum. Maybe there was like a gap in learning. That's definitely happened to me before. Then you go tweak it, and then you're all good for the next time. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is review the data to see how you can, best help your students. That's the most important. The second thing is just kind of a perk, and that's that you can use this data in the aforementioned end of the year report to advocate for your role. So you can show your principal, kind of show off and say, look how awesome my counseling program is. I helped all these kiddos, and these students progressed this much, and this group was awesome because students didn't know how to do this, and now they know how to do this. You can also display this if you don't want to wait till the end of the year. Display this on like a bulletin board, have a data wall in your school to show off the program, because we're constantly trying to advocate for our role and our profession as a whole, and just to really show how powerful and necessary school counselors are. Okay guys, I hope you found those data tools super helpful. 2 links I want you to check out. One is for my data tools bundle. So this is all the templates. I talked to you about those 5 things: the counseling log, the end of the year report, the needs assessment, the behavior surveys, and the self-assessments. I have easy peasy templates in both print and digital for you there. So check that out. I'll link to it in the show notes. If you want to get, if you're like, this is my year for data, that's for you. Also, I have that freebie for you. So this is that school counseling toolkit that focuses on scheduling, organization, and data collection. And there's some really good stuff on data in there. There's like a whole chart on like how to use data and when to use it. So I think you're gonna love that. Be sure to download that freebie. We'll link to it in the show notes as well. Okay guys, I hope you found today's episode helpful. That's the conclusion of our January, goal setting, getting our counseling lives easier with practical solutions. I hope you found this series and this episode helpful, and I will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.